Here's the problem. When trying to tighten down the bolt on your bulkhead connector at the firewall, the bolt keeps turning but never tightens down. What's happening? Let's find out why. For the sake of clarity, only the main connectors, not the wiring, will be shown. First, when installing any wiring harness, you must make certain that your battery is disconnected. Next, let's identify our components. On the interior compartment of the vehicle, we have our fuse block. Then physically attached to the back of the fuse block is the bulkhead connector. This is the connector that passes through the firewall. Both of these connectors are part of the dash harness. Within the engine compartment, we have another bulkhead connector and bolt from the engine harness, along with the bulkhead connector from the forward lamp or front light harness. As you can see, for this vehicle, the engine and forward lamp harnesses bulkhead connectors snap together to form one large connector. It is this combined bulkhead connector and bolt that will bolt into the dash harness's bulkhead connector at the firewall. Since the problem I'll recreate is a rare occurrence, before recreating the problem, I'm going to deliberately and partially pry off the T-nut from the bulkhead connector. More about the T-nut later in the video. If I don't partially pry the nut from the connector, I will not be able to recreate the problem. So why is it that when I try to tighten down the bolt on my bulkhead connector into the T-nut, the bolt keeps turning but never tightens down? Here's what can happen. As you tighten the bolt with your ratchet, if you apply too much force to the bolt, whether simultaneously turning the bolt or not, it is possible for the T-nut to either partially dislodge from the bulkhead connector, in which case your bolt will keep turning and never tighten down, or in another scenario, if the bolt has not yet started to thread into the T-nut, the T-nut may completely fall out of the connector and get lodged between the fuse block and bulkhead connector, or even fall to the floorboard. Rest assured that when we press the T-nut into the bulkhead connector, we use a pneumatic press. And, as you can see, when using this pull tester, it takes over 22 pounds of force to remove the T-nut from the connector. So, under normal installation, the nut should remain intact. Here's a close-up of a T-nut that is pressed into the dash harness's bulkhead connector. The one used for your dash harness may differ. As you can see, there are several pointed barbs on the flange that dig deep into the plastic connector to prevent the nut from rotating when the bolt is tightened. So, what can you do if your T-nut becomes dislodged from your bulkhead connector? It's a relatively simple fix. First, separate your fuse block from your bulkhead connector. Prior to doing so, you'll want to identify how the two connectors will need to go back together, since it is possible for the bulkhead connector to reattach 180 degrees off. I am using a couple pieces of yellow tape for this purpose. Next, to separate both parts, look for the long locking provision that's part of the bulkhead connector. Gently insert a flat blade screwdriver in this manner to release and separate the two parts. Next, you'll need to straighten out the pointed barbs on the T-nut if they are bent. If you want, prior to reinstallation of the T-nut, you can apply a small amount of thick superglue to the T-nut at these locations. Be careful not to get the glue into the inner threads. For reassembly of the T-nut, you have two options. Option 1 involves having a helper hold the nut in place while you tighten the bolt. Once the bolt begins to thread into the nut, keep the nut from rotating until the barbs begin to bite into the plastic. Then, continue to tighten the bolt until all bulkhead connectors fully come together. Option 2. Identify the bolt's thread size as used on your harness. In this case, a 1/4 20 hex bolt was used, but sizes can vary. I'll use this bolt and some larger washers to reattach the T-nut into the dash harness's bulkhead connector. Once the bolt begins to thread into the nut, keep the nut from rotating until the barbs begin to bite into the plastic. Continue to tighten the bolt until the T-nut is fully seated. Then remove the bolt and washer. A word of caution. During your wiring harness installation, do not use any type of thread locker on the threads of your bulkhead connector's bolt. A helpful tip: if you need to separate your engine harness from your forward lamp harness's bulkhead connector, you can do so with a flat blade screwdriver by gently prying at these locations.